In this episode of the Omega podcast, we have a recruitment lead at Precision Life Sciences breaking down the use of AI in recruitment, advice for biotech and life sciences professionals, and the future trends impacting the sector. Let's lean into this groundbreaking conversation.
Welcome to the Omega podcast with Todd Marlin, the recruiting lead for Precision Talent Group, working across the life sciences, healthcare, and technology industries. He has over 30 years of experience across various industries, including sports and hospitality. It's such a pleasure to have you on the podcast, Todd.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Keenan. It's been a while since we've seen each other, and it's nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to be seen, and I know it's around the holiday season, but as we both know, there's been a lot of conversation pertaining to healthcare, life sciences, and as you're currently in this domain, I know there's many individuals that are extremely excited about the conversation we're about to have. To kick us off, what initially drew you to the field of life sciences?
It's funny. I spent about 20 or 25 years in the sports and entertainment industry. And the last of it is when, I met you down with the Brockton Rocks. And, at that point, my kids were starting to grow up. And I was sitting there watching a Brockton Rocks game one night, and my wife is sending me videos of my kids' baseball game. And I said, something's not right here. And at that point, I said, I've got to go do something else. And I left the Rocks and went to a ticketing company as a VP of sales. And about 7 months after I took that job, COVID came, and that was it for ticketing and all that type of stuff. And I really started saying to myself, what do I want to do next? And the thing that kept coming into my mind was, all right, what did I enjoy the most of the job when I was, running the baseball teams? And that was hiring young people, bringing them in, training them up, and getting people jobs. So I said, all right, let's try some recruiting. And, then I said to myself, all right, where do I want to be recruiting within? And, it was just very naturally kind of came the life sciences piece of it because of the Boston, and here in Boston, it's one of the meccas of the life sciences industry. So to be able to jump into, recruiting within that industry right here has been fabulous. And it's been completely different than the baseball world. I've learned so many things, and it's just an absolutely fabulous, fascinating industry. And I've really enjoyed it so far in my last 3 years.
Yeah, and I know that there's definitely a lot of development and conversations pertaining to the different developing studies. And as we both know, with COVID-19, everyone was looking to life sciences to see what new developing studies, vaccinations were going to be coming out of large corporations or large pharmaceutical companies. But to kind of think back to your educational journey,
Yeah.
you had mentioned in your bio that you have a sports and hospitality background, finding that niche to at least submerge yourself as a life science recruiting lead, that's definitely very different than your particular background. Do you have some sort of educational journey that you can share with our audience that led you to your current position, or at least your previous exposure or experiences that assisted you in this particular role?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I went to Ohio Northern University and I got a marketing degree, which was really fairly a basic general business type. For me, it wasn't as much an educational, well, I guess you could call it an educational journey, but it's an educational journey, not an academia. It was more an educational journey of doing it. And, getting thrown into the middle of a baseball season, having no idea what to do, how to do it, and really being able to, within 5 years, become a general manager and oversee baseball teams. And then become a person that, actually was brought in because they understood how to take teams that were underperforming and build them back into performers. So, all those different things, trial and error and messing up really bad and, making some changes and learning how to make those adjustments. And really, for me, it was probably what led me to the recruiting side is the exposure that I had to other people. I was constantly dealing with other people, talking to other people, and every year I would have to hire, 100 to 200 people, some full-time, a lot of, the people were seasonal employees, but you're constantly interacting with different people. So it kind of naturally led me into this recruiting area. And, also my father was in recruiting for about 30 years himself. So I kind of knew what it was all about. So it really was just kind of a natural progression when that opportunity arose. And it's been a blast. It's so much fun. And now getting people to get them jobs, especially right now, when everybody's having such a hard time, it's such a great feeling. I mean, one quick story, there was a lady just the other day interviewed for a job at a great company that we work with here at Precision. And unfortunately, they were like, you know what? We're not really going to go with her right now. A week and a half later, we get a call. Hey, the people that we thought were going to take this job aren't going to take it. Do you think she would go? Within 2 days, she had an offer. And this lady is just ecstatic. So to be able to have that kind of influence in people's careers and what they're trying to do, it's a great feeling. It really is.
Yeah, being able to see the journey from start to finish and being able to be part of the process that these candidates are going through, especially in this market, with there being a lot of closed doors that people are facing regarding companies not recruiting now. They're kind of laying people off, they're reserving capital, they're, expending it to maybe AI in this instance, where they're trying to see if they can reduce headcount, and obviously save money in other particular domains. But, if you are a biotech or a scientist in this particular sector, what type of guidance would you offer to aspiring scientists or those in the biotech sector?
Just network, keep networking, constantly network. This nowadays it's really difficult to find a job. Everything is coming in AI. It's now these ATS where if you don't have the right words in your resume, a person's probably not even going to ever see you. But, if you are doing the right things networking wise and you're meeting people and you're talking to people and you're utilizing LinkedIn in the professional way that it's really meant to be, that is going to set you up for the most success to get you a position. And honestly, being active with recruiters, that's another good thing. The people that are the recruiters within industry, they know that industry the best, and they're the ones who can help and guide you across your path to help you find the right place.
Yeah, that's perfect. Networking is so crucial, especially with everything going on. And LinkedIn, as you mentioned, is a fantastic platform to do so. But I think for many, they may say to themselves, I may not have the network, I may not have that extrovert personality to be able to do that. Can you speak to your experience? Can you recount a defining moment in your career that influenced your research path or your path to where you are today that perhaps could be helpful to some of our listeners?
For me, I always look back to when I was in college and, I had to work and I worked hard. I worked landscape. I laid sod actually every single day. I was at the shop at 5 o'clock in the morning. We got in the truck, we drove 45 minutes and we laid sod in 90-degree humidity every day, all day. But the one thing that I took from that, there was this guy and he was my manager and his name was Ed. Big guy, white, blonde hair, kind of a Scottish kind of guy with the red face. His face would get all
Yeah.
red and heated in the day. And he was awesome. But I mean, he was the boss and he didn't have to work. But he was in that Bobcat and he was driving it and he was the dirtiest one and he was working the hardest all day, every single day. And that is the one thing in my mind that I've always taken into any job that I've ever had. If I go into a job, nobody's going to outwork me. I'll tell you that right now. And it's not always hours. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in front of your computer for 20 hours. You don't have to do that. But outwork means do the things that you need to do to be successful. And I would just say, to build your career path, if you work hard and you do those things to really kind of build yourself up, that network is going to come because people are going to want to be around you. They're going to respect you and they're going to see that you can contribute value to their organization. And that's how you're going to keep finding jobs. So I say work hard and it'll come to you.
Perfect. And as we shift gears here in our conversation, especially in the biotech and life sciences sector, there's a lot of conversation pertaining to certain businesses not receiving grants, funding, even opportunities in hiring the right personnel to fulfill different obligations that they may have, for instance, for projects that they may have for the state, for the government in this instance. I mean, it's a very disruptive market, of course, and sector as it is. But what are the most promising new technologies currently emerging in your field that perhaps is disrupting it? You mentioned earlier with AI resumes being utilized. I mean, are there any other particular technologies that you've seen has been very game changing in your instance?
I think the ATS and the AI piece is the biggest within recruiting. It's really seemed to take a real control of all hiring, quite honestly, and it's kind of sad. I mean, I'm old. I remember the days when you actually sat in front of your typewriter and you typed out your resume and you had made 50 copies of it and You mailed them to the organization and you actually heard back from people. Nowadays, it's all changed. And, there's ghost jobs that people are calling it now, where companies are posting jobs that never are ever going to get filled. It's all driven by the AI and the ATS, where if you send in your resume, like I mentioned earlier, and you don't have the right keywords in there, a person's never even going to see your resume. On the other hand, AI is as you look at it from a recruiter, the recruiting side of it, it can be very beneficial. If you're receiving, especially in a market now where you're getting 100, 200 resumes, in a day for a position because there are so many people looking for jobs, it's a lot easier to go through those resumes with AI and pulling out those words. So, it's kind of that tug back and forth where sooner or later, I think everybody knows that the process is broken. Sooner or later, something has got to happen that either the AI is going to get better and it's going to work for people, or that system is going to kind of start working hand in hand because the companies aren't able to match with the right people. The people aren't able to match with the right companies, and things are just in a real kind of a strange flux right now. As far as other technologies, I think that's the biggest one, where it's got to be right now. There's probably some other stuff out there, but I'm not familiar with it.
Enjoying your Omega podcast experience? We want to hear from you. Leave us a comment or visit our website at omegaconsulting.online for more insights, success stories, resources, and more. Digitized for excellence.
Yeah, I think you mentioned something so critical is, there is a little bit of doubt when you utilize some of these AI tools, because most of the times that I've been using within Omega has been the issue of receiving candidates. And for instance, if they don't have those keywords, the bot in this instance would immediately remove candidates that perhaps could be a better candidate if we met in person, if there was a name to the face, right? Or a face to the name in this instance. Do you see that playing into the future of recruiting in any particular way, where there might be more opportunities to have maybe some more human touch points to kind of alleviate the burden of maybe removing candidates that might be better suited? I mean, especially in biotech, and scientists in this instance, I mean, it's better to see their work than to kind of just look at a resume, I'm assuming. But I mean, does that play a role in that instance?
Yeah, I think it's going to have to. I think for a number of reasons. And, another thing for AI, I've heard where people are interviewing for jobs and typing in questions to AI and getting the answers and using those in their interviews. So I think at some point there's going to have to be more human interaction. I really believe that a lot of what has transpired is because of what happened to COVID. Everything started happening either via Zoom or teleconferencing, and just things kind of changed. Everything really kind of changed. And I think that people are really kind of grappling with this technology and how to use it and how to use it effectively. And people are just now kind of saying, wait a minute, maybe this isn't really the best technology right now, and we have to kind of change things up. And I think you're going to start seeing that type of stuff happen. And I think you're going to start seeing a lot more face-to-face. One of the things that I am seeing in the recruiting world is that a lot of companies are asking people to be back in the office. So this remote work, as much as everybody loves it, and I think it's a fabulous thing, I think it's going to be reined in here in the next, and it's starting to be reined in now, quite honestly. And my gut feeling is it'll probably end up more along a hybrid type schedule, and people will be able to have a day or two at home. But that is going to contribute to bringing people back into the office, which I think ultimately will contribute to bringing candidates into the office face to face and meeting them, and then potentially realizing that they do have transferable skills and it doesn't have to be the perfect match. But I'll also go back to what I said before about how networking is so important, because instead of sending your resume in through an ATS, if you can have a connection to send that resume and drop that resume onto the hiring manager's desk, that's a way better in than any time sending it in through an ATS.
Yeah, definitely. Those human touch points are so crucial. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I just find that if you're going to be sending a resume in this day and age, without having any type of introduction, any type of relationship with someone internally within the organization, it's like basically shooting in the dark. You really
Yep,
don't know
absolutely.
where you're targeting, and you may not get the results that you're looking for. But as we look to 2025, I mean, we're right around the corner, a few weeks away. And I know a lot of companies now are planning for the next few months, or maybe are already instituting what they're going to be planning for in the next quarter or so. What do you see has been probably an opportunity, in the biotech sphere, that you see as something that that you presume could be revolutionary, or in this instance, that could be an opportunity? As we talked about AI being something that could be of an opportunity, but from the recruitment world, where do you see there being some opportunities to maybe improve that? We talked about there being tons and thousands of people, unemployed right now. I think the employment rate's around 3 to 5% at the moment. But where do you see sort of recruitment leads in this instance kind of mending that gap or maybe providing more opportunities? Do you see that there being more roles maybe being rolled out in the new year, especially in life sciences, biotech? Or do you think it's going to be rolled back because of, lack of funding? What do you kind of feel the market's going?
That's the big question. Around our office, we talk about it all the time, around the industry, just in general. It's really kind of tough. I'm basing it off of my conversations with our salespeople, who are the ones who are talking to the hiring managers, talking to human resources every day. I think that they don't even really have a firm grasp. You can talk to one person and they'll say, yeah, I think it's going to kick back in right away in 2025, as soon as we turn that corner. And then you talk to somebody else and they're like, yeah, no, I don't think that's going to happen. And I kind of lean towards that, to be quite honest with you. I'm not seeing a lot of the big projects picking back up yet. A lot of the projects were stopped, a year or 2 years ago with the interest rates so high, and they quit building and doing these. And until some of those types of things start happening again, I think a lot of those jobs are just not going to get filled, especially some of that lower level type stuff. I do think that as we go forward into 2025, there is some potential for some growth, because it does seem that there is VC money that is coming back into the life science world. But I will say, I think that the people that are giving out the money are looking for the opportunities where there's going to be a lot better fiscal management, because I think, as what we've also seen in the last year and a half, is a lot of these companies were given millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they blew it within 6, 8 months, a year, 2 years, very quickly. And people, the VC world is not going to keep giving money to companies that aren't going to be fiscally responsible. So I think you're going to kind of see it come back, but I think it's going to come back a little bit slower. But when it does, the opportunities will come back. There will be more jobs, because this is an industry that's a very important industry, especially as you're talking about technology and AI and some of this other type. I mean, there's wearable pieces that you can now buy that, with like the Apple Watches and the rings.
Wearable tech.
Yeah, wearable tech. It's amazing what is going on right now. I talk to people every day, and I always tell them, I'm like, it's amazing what the kind of stuff you guys work on, because I would never imagine it. I used to count baseballs, and you guys are like creating, saving people's lives by, mixing genes and, monoclonal antibodies and all that type of stuff. And I don't even know what it is. No, it's fabulous. So I do think things are going to change, but I don't. It's going to be an interesting climb back.
Oh yeah, for sure. And just so that we can kind of allow our audience to kind of be in this moment with us, this past week we obviously heard the devastating news of the United Healthcare CEO being, I would even put it to the term assassin in this instance.
Yeah.
And there's been so much developing conversations about, the healthcare sector and revisions and improvements that have been made. And obviously, being in the life science and biotech sphere, I mean, that's just a very close neighbor in that instance, how that all plays into one motion, right? The pharmaceutical needs that we obviously are developing, or that your team is developing or hiring for, is then being sent to hospitals. And obviously that it all aligns in this instance. But what I'm trying to get at is, what is your perspective, of this mass situation of, a CEO being targeted, but really having this large, I would like to say, momentum behind, improvements in healthcare? Do you find that being something that's being discussed in your day-to-day practice? Is it impacting your business? Have you had conversations with other, clients of yours that are in the healthcare sector that are impacted by this situation?
It's not really anything that we talk about here in the office. We do have a healthcare division. With that said, that is more for recruiting nurses, specifically. And that's kind of an interesting world in and of itself. But I think it all kind of comes back to, it's all kind of in one. I mean, it's all about these pharmaceutical companies. They're developing these drugs and these products, and a lot of them are very useful to people. And unfortunately, for some reason, some of these healthcare agencies are not allowing these people to have these treatments because they are so costly. And what people see and what I think happened, and I really don't know anything, I mean, any more than you do about this stuff, but it seems to me that somebody probably had a bad experience and for some reason took it out on this poor CEO. Ultimately, he oversees this, but is he the one who made the decision that this particular person couldn't have whatever? I don't know. It's all kind of crazy to me, and the whole world is crazy to me, to be quite honest with you right now.
You're telling me.
And healthcare has just kind of been thrown into it. And things have changed drastically within our healthcare recruiting from, during COVID. Everybody wanted nurses and they were willing to pay whatever to get a nurse to come to their facility. Now it's really tough to find the nurses and to find the facilities that will take the nurses. It's really just a very interesting kind of area right now, and it's all mixed into one big thing. I wish there were people I'm sure there are people working on it, but I wish it could get solved a little bit easier than it seems to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of intricacies and details that go into it, but
Really
it's an ongoing conversation that I believe people should have, and especially those that are in the healthcare or life sciences sector that can have impact. It's definitely important to just be aware as to what's going on.
Yeah.
But as we come to a close in this fantastic conversation, and I feel as though, Todd, we can have this conversation for hours, but what excites you most about the future of life science research?
Just the things that some of these companies are working on, like I say, to help some people, especially in like some of these rare disease worlds. They're developing drugs now. We're seeing it for Alzheimer's. We're seeing clinical trials for Parkinson's. A lot of these types of things that we never really saw are starting to come into fruition because of some of the science that's coming into it. The cell and gene therapy, the ADCs and the monoclonal antibodies, all this science that they're coming up with is going to, I always joke that people are going to live to be 200 years old, if not longer, because they're developing drugs and science that can detect people's issues before it even happens. And I think it's just going to continue to grow. I think it's ultimately going to, have to be reined in at some point because costs in, everything that goes into the whole healthcare side that we just kind of touched on. But, I think it's a fabulous industry. I think there is a ton of growth that's going to happen in it. And I would encourage people to go into the sciences, learn biology, learn chemistry, because there's going to be great opportunities within this industry, especially in the future. It's not going away.
Amazing. Well, Todd, it's been such a pleasure to chat with you today. And again, thank you for being on the Omega podcast.
You got it, Keena. Thank you so much. It's great seeing you. Take care.